The Prince and the Wounded Dragon. The Cursed Heart. The wind tore through the cliffs of Valoria's northern border, sharp as a blade, carrying the bitter scent of ash and pine. Prince Cedric, cloaked in black, stood at the edge of a jagged outcrop, staring into the yawning mouth of the dragon's lair. His gloved hand rested on the hilt of his sword, fingers trembling not from the cold, but from the weight of his existence. At 22, he was a prince in name, heir to a throne he neither wanted nor felt worthy of. His heart, bound by a curse since birth, was a stone in his chest, incapable of joy. Every smile he offered was a performance, every victory a hollow echo. The court whispered of magic, of a spell cast by enemies long vanquished, but Cedric cared little for its origins. He knew only the emptiness, a void that painted the world in shades of gray. Below, the kingdom of Valoria sprawled under a starlit sky, its villages glowing faintly with torchlight. Cedric's gaze lingered on the horizon, where plumes of smoke rose from the latest devastation. For weeks, a dragon, Erinder, the bards called it, had scorched fields and homes, its roar shaking the earth. The people demanded blood, and King Alhar, Cedric's father, had issued his decree in the throne room's cold marble hall: slay the beast, Cedric. Prove you're more than a shadow. The words had cut deeper than any sword, their disdain a familiar sting. Althar saw his son's curse as weakness, a stain on the royal line. Cedric, numb to hope, saw this mission as a chance for release. If the dragon's fire took him, perhaps the curse would burn away too. He adjusted the pack on his shoulders, heavy with provisions and a single torch. The knights had refused to join him, their murmurs of cursed prince and ill omen trailing him like ghosts. Cedric didn't blame them. He was no warrior, no hero. His training had been dutiful, his swordsmanship adequate, but his heart never stirred for glory. He descended the rocky path, the cave's darkness swallowing the starlight. The air grew thick, warm with an ancient musk, and his torch cast flickering shadows on walls that glistened like polished obsidian. His boots crunched on loose stones, the sound swallowed by the cavern's vastness. Somewhere ahead, the dragon waited. Cedric's mind drifted to his childhood, to the moments that shaped his hollow existence. He remembered his mother, Queen Lysara, who died when he was 5, her warm hands the last touch of love he could recall. After her death, Althar grew distant, his eyes hardening whenever they fell on his son. "You're not whole," he'd said once, when Cedric, barely 10, had failed to laugh at a court jester's antics. The curse, discovered by the royal mages, was a mystery. Some said it was tied to a forgotten feud, others to a relic lost in time. Cedric only knew it stole the warmth from every sunrise, every song, every embrace. He had learned to mimic joy, to nod and smile, but the act left him weary, like an actor trapped in a role he despised. The cavern deepened, its walls narrowing. Cedric's torch sputtered, and he tightened his grip on his sword. He had heard the tales of Erinder, scales like molten gold, wings that blotted out the moon, breath that could melt stone. The bards sang of its fury, but none spoke of why it raged. Cedric didn't care. He wanted this over, victory or death, it made no difference. His steps slowed as a low rumble filled the air, like thunder trapped in stone. The cave opened into a vast chamber, and there it was. Erinder lay coiled in the shadows, its massive form dwarfing the cavern. Its scales, dull and patchy with scars, caught the torchlight in faint glimmers. Wings, tattered at the edges, were folded tightly against its body. Its head, crowned with horns like twisted iron, rested on its claws, but its eyes, amber, glowing like twin suns. Fixed on Cedric with a piercing intensity. He expected rage, a roar, a burst of flame. Instead, the dragon's gaze held something else, grief, raw and unguarded, so potent it made Cedric's breath catch. Human, Erinder rumbled, its voice a landslide of sound that vibrated through Cedric's bones. "Why do you seek death?" Cedric's sword wavered in his grip. He had rehearsed threats, declarations of duty, but the dragon's questions stripped them away. "I seek yours," he said, the words frail against the cavern's echo. He stepped forward, raising his blade, but his heart, cursed, heavy, felt no fire for the fight. Irinder's laugh was low, bitter, like the scrape of stone on stone. You carry a curse, boy. I smell it, joyless, empty. It is no stranger to me. The dragon shifted, its claws scraping the floor, revealing a space where it clutched at nothing, as if holding a phantom treasure. Your bloodline did this. They stole my egg, my only child, and bound your heart to its loss. Kill me, and your curse remains. Cedric froze, the sword heavy in his hand. The curse, tied to the dragon? His mind reeled, memories of court whispers surfacing, tales of his ancestors' conquests, of treasures taken from sacred places. What do you mean? He asked, voice hoarse, barely audible over the drip of water somewhere in the dark. Irinder's eyes narrowed, glinting with pain. Long ago, your forefathers raided the Dragon Pine Peaks, seeking power. They took my egg, a spark of life woven with magic. They hid it, used its essence to curse their foes, your bloodline among them. My loss became your prison. The egg lives still, hidden in a place of ice and shadow, guarded by greed and time. Return it, and we both may be free. Cedric's torch flickered, casting wild shadows. He wanted to dismiss the dragon's words, to call them lies, but the grief in Irinder's gaze mirrored his own emptiness. For years, he had lived as a ghost, moving through a world that sparkled for others, but not for him. The dragon's pain was a reflection, a wound that resonated in a way he couldn't ignore. Where is it? He asked, lowering his sword. In the shattered veil, Irinder said, its voice softening, though its eyes remained wary. A wasteland of ice in the far north, where the world's bones pierce the sky. The egg is guarded, not by beasts, but by those who crave its power. You will face trials, human. You are not strong, not in body or heart. Why should I trust you? Cedric swallowed, the question cutting deeper than his father's scorn. I don't know, he admitted, his voice raw. I'm not a hero. I'm not even whole. But I know what it's like to lose something you can't name. If there's a chance to end this, for both of us, I'll try. Irinder studied him, its massive head tilting. For a moment, the cavern was silent, save for the dragon's slow, heavy breaths. Then go, it said at last. But know this, the path will test you, and failure will bind us both to this pain forever. Cedric nodded, his chest tight with something new, not joy, not yet, but a spark of purpose, fragile as a candle in a storm. He sheathed his sword, the gesture feeling like a vow. As he turned to leave, Irinder's voice followed him, softer now. You are not what I expected, cursed one. Perhaps that is enough. The climb back to the surface was long, the wind colder than before. Cedric's torch had died, but the stars above were bright, their light a faint guide. He thought of his father, waiting for a trophy, a dragon's head to parade before the court. Instead, Cedric carried something else, a promise, a chance to break the chains that bound him. The shattered veil was days away, through forests and mountains, and he had no map, no allies, only the dragon's words and the faint pulse of resolve in his chest. He paused at the cliff's edge, looking back at the cave. Irinder's grief lingered in his mind, a mirror to his own. For the first time, he wasn't alone in his emptiness. The curse still held him, but the spark of purpose burned brighter now, a light to carry into the unknown. He adjusted his pack and began the descent, each step a defiance of the weight in his heart. The kingdom of Valoria buzzed with rumors as Cedric prepared to leave. The court, expecting a triumphant return, was baffled by his silence. He spoke to no one, not even the mages who offered spells of protection. He packed sparingly, a cloak, a water skin, a dagger, and a small journal his mother had given him, its pages blank save for a single line in her hand, "Find what makes you whole." He had never understood it, but he carried it still, a relic of a time before the curse defined him. The road north was treacherous, winding through forests thick with mist and mountains that loomed like silent judges. Cedric traveled alone, his cursed heart a constant companion. At night, he camped under pines, the stars his only witnesses. He dreamed of Irinder, of amber eyes, and a voice that spoke of loss. The dragon's pain was a thread connecting them, a fragile bond that gave him strength to keep moving. Days bled into weeks, the landscape growing harsher. Cedric's body ached, his boots worn thin, but the spark of purpose held. He passed villages scarred by Arinder's flames, their people eyeing him with suspicion. The cursed prince, they whispered, thinking he couldn't hear. He didn't correct them. He wasn't here for their approval, only for the egg, for the chance to free himself and the dragon from their shared torment. One night, camped by a frozen stream, Cedric opened his mother's journal. The single line stared back at him, her handwriting soft and sure. "Find what makes you whole." He traced the words, his fingers numb. For years, he had thought wholeness was impossible, stolen by the curse. But Arinder's words had shifted something in him. The egg wasn't just a key to his freedom. It was a chance to right a wrong, to give back what his ancestors had taken. He closed the journal, the spark in his chest flaring brighter. He didn't know if he could succeed, but he would try for Arinder, for himself, for the boy who had once dreamed of a world that felt alive. The shattered veil waited, a land of ice and shadow where answers lay buried. Cedric rose at dawn, his breath clouding in the frigid air. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, he walked with purpose, the dragon's grief and his own entwined, a map written in pain and hope. The quest begins. The forest gave way to a desolate plain, where the wind howled like a mourner, carrying flecks of ice that stung Cedric's face. He pulled his cloak tighter, the coarse wool a gift from a merchant he'd saved days ago, its weight a reminder of a kindness he hadn't planned. At 22, Prince Cedric of Vaeloria was no hero, no warrior, only a cursed man, his heart bound by a spell that stole joy, leaving him a shadow in his own life. Yet here he was, trudging north toward the shattered veil, driven by a vow to a dragon named Arinder. The dragon's words echoed in his mind, "Return my egg, and we both may be free." The promise of breaking his curse, of feeling something beyond the leaden weight in his chest, had ignited a spark of purpose, fragile but unyielding. The road from Vaeloria's northern cliffs had been grueling. Cedric traveled alone, shunned by the kingdom's knights who saw his curse as a blight. "Ill omen," they'd muttered, refusing to join him. He didn't care. Their scorn was familiar, an echo of his father's cold gaze. King Alhar had sent him to slay Arinder, not to bargain with it, but Cedric carried a different mission now, to find the dragon's egg, stolen by his ancestors, hidden in a wasteland of ice and shadow. The task felt impossible, yet the memory of Arinder's amber eyes, heavy with grief, kept him moving. Their shared pain was a thread, binding them across miles. The plain stretched endlessly, its gray expanse broken only by skeletal trees and patches of frost. Cedric's boots, worn thin, crunched on frozen earth, each step a battle against the cold that seeped into his bones. His pack held little, a water skin, a dagger, a few strips of dried meat, and his mother's journal, its single line, "Find what makes you whole," a quiet anchor. He hadn't written in it, not yet. What could he say? That he, a joyless prince, had promised a dragon salvation? The thought felt absurd, yet it was all he had. Night fell, and Cedric camped beneath a twisted oak, its branches clawing at the sky. He built a small fire, its warmth barely reaching his numbed fingers. As he chewed a strip of meat, his mind drifted to the dragon's lair, to Arinder's voice like a landslide. The egg is guarded, not by beasts, but by those who crave its power. Cedric didn't know what awaited him, only that the shattered veil was days away, through mountains and blizzards. He closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him under, and dreamed. In the dream, Arinder's amber eyes glowed through a haze of mist. The dragon didn't speak, but images flooded Cedric's mind. A nest of stone under a starlit sky, a single egg pulsing with light, and hands, human hands, tearing it away. Arinder's roar shook the vision, a sound of loss so raw it jolted Cedric awake. His heart pounded, not with joy but with a strange clarity. The dragon was reaching out, guiding him. He clutched his mother's journal, its leather worn under his fingers. "I'll find it," he whispered, to the stars, to Arinder, to himself. Dawn broke, gray and unforgiving. Cedric pressed on, the plane giving way to the Frostfang Pass, a narrow gorge flanked by cliffs that loomed like silent sentinels. The air grew colder, the wind sharper, carrying whispers of snow. He moved carefully, wary of loose rocks and hidden crevices. By midday, the pass darkened, clouds swallowing the sun. Cedric's breath clouded before him, his steps slowing as fatigue gnawed at his limbs. He was no stranger to hardship, but the curse made every effort feel heavier, as if the world itself pressed against him. A shout broke the silence, followed by the clatter of steel. Cedric ducked behind a boulder, heart racing. Voices echoed through the pass, gruff, laced with greed. "The egg's worth a kingdom," one said. "The prince is a fool to seek it alone." Mercenaries, Cedric realized, their words confirming his fears. The egg's legend had spread, its magic allure for those hungry for power. He peered around the boulder, counting 5 men, their armor glinting faintly, swords at their hips. They hadn't seen him, but they blocked the path ahead. Cedric's hand tightened on his dagger. He was no match for them in a fight. His swordsmanship was passable, his strength average. The curse dulled his reflexes, his will. But he couldn't turn back. Arinder's grief, his own faint hope, pushed him forward. He scanned the pass, noting a narrow ledge above the mercenaries' camp. An idea formed, risky but possible. He waited until dusk, when the men settled around a fire, their laughter coarse. Moving silently, Cedric climbed the ledge, his fingers scraping raw against icy rock. He dislodged a pile of loose stones, sending them crashing into the pass. The mercenaries shouted, scrambling as dust and debris rained down. Cedric slipped past, heart pounding, leaving them to curse their imagined avalanche. The pass opened into a valley, where snow fell in earnest, blanketing the ground. Cedric's breath came in sharp gasps, his body aching. He stumbled, catching himself against a tree. The merchant's cloak, patched but warm, saved him from the worst of the cold, and he remembered the man's face, tear-streaked, grateful, when Cedric had pulled him from a snowdrift days earlier. The act had been instinctive, a reflex against the curse's numbness. The merchant had offered the cloak, insisting, "You've a good heart, lad, cursed or not." Cedric hadn't felt goodness, only duty, but the memory lingered, a small light in his gray world. Night after night, Arinder's visions came, each clearer than the last. "Seek the crystal spire where shadows dance," the dragon whispered, its voice a rumble in Cedric's mind. He saw glimpses of the shattered veil, ice spires piercing the sky, a glow pulsing beneath them. The visions were a lifeline, proof that Arinder trusted him, despite his doubts. He clung to them, even as the cold deepened, his rations dwindled, and his body weakened. One evening, seeking shelter, he found a cave, its entrance half hidden by snow. Inside, a fire burned, tended by an old man with eyes like polished flint. "You're the cursed prince," the man said, voice dry as parchment. "I smell the magic on you, heavy as death." Cedric stiffened, hand on his dagger. "Who are you?" "A hermit," the man said, stirring a pot of broth. "Name's Torin. I know the egg you seek. Its power bends fate, but only a heart that knows loss can claim it." He offered Cedric a bowl, his gaze piercing. "You've known loss, haven't you?" Cedric took the broth, its warmth seeping into his hands. "I've known nothing else," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He spoke of the curse, of his mother's death, of his father's scorn. Torin listened, nodding, his silence a strange comfort. "The egg's in the shattered veil," Torin said at last. "Guarded by those who'd use its magic for ruin. You'll need more than a sword, boy. You'll need a reason to keep going." Cedric left at dawn, Torin's words heavy in his mind. The hermit had given him a small pouch of herbs for strength and a warning. The veil tests the heart, not the blade. Cedric didn't know if he was ready, but he pressed on, driven by the spark Arinder had ignited. The landscape grew harsher, snow piling high, the wind a relentless foe. He rationed his food, his body thinning, but the visions kept him steady. Irinder's trust was a weight and a gift, a reason to endure. One night, as a blizzard raged, Cedric nearly faltered. He collapsed in a drift, the cold promising an end to his struggle. The curse whispered to give up, to let the snow take him. But another memory surfaced, a nursemaid from his childhood, her voice soft as she tucked him in. "You're enough, Cedric," she'd said, defying his father's disdain. "Keep going, even when it hurts." He clung to her words, to Irinder's visions, and forced himself to rise, one step, then another. The shattered veil appeared at last, a wasteland of ice spires glinting under a gray sky. Cedric's breath caught as he climbed a ridge, the merchant's cloak flapping in the wind. Below, a crystal spire towered, its surface pulsing with blue light, shadows writhing within like trapped specters. A low chant drifted from its base, chilling his blood. Figures in black robes circled a stone altar, their faces hidden. Atop the altar sat the egg, glowing faintly, encased in a cage of iron thorns. A woman in a crimson cloak led the chant, her voice sharp with power. Cedric crouched behind an ice shelf, his heart pounding. The egg was real, its light calling to him, to Irinder. The cult's leader raised a dagger, her words unintelligible but heavy with intent. They meant to harness the egg's magic, to bend its power to their will. Cedric's hand tightened on his dagger, not for glory, but for the dragon, for the vow that had carried him this far. The curse still held him, dulling his fear, his hope, but it couldn't stop the spark in his chest, now a steady flame. He didn't know how he'd face the cult, but he would. For Irinder. For himself. He stepped forward, snow crunching underfoot, ready to meet whatever came next. The heart's awakening. The shattered veil's icy spires gleamed under a sky heavy with storm clouds, their jagged edges cutting the horizon like broken glass. Prince Cedric crouched behind a shelf of ice, his breath shallow, blood seeping through his gloved fingers where he clutched his side. The dragon's egg glowed faintly on the stone altar below, its light pulsing through a cage of iron thorns. Black-robed figures chanted around it, their voices a low hum of power, led by a woman in a crimson cloak whose presence radiated menace. Cedric's cursed heart, forever numb to joy, beat with a stubborn resolve. He was no warrior, no hero, just a man bound by a vow to Irinder, the dragon whose grief mirrored his own. The egg, stolen by his ancestors, was the key to breaking their shared curse, and he would not fail now, not after coming this far. The journey to the shattered veil had tested him, blizzards, mercenaries, hunger, and the relentless weight of his curse. Yet Irinder's visions had guided him, amber eyes piercing his dreams with glimpses of the egg and warnings of its guardians. "Seek the crystal spire where shadows dance," the dragon had whispered, and here it was, the spire towering above, its surface alive with writhing shadows. Cedric's body ached, his boots worn to tatters, but the spark of purpose ignited in the dragon's lair burned brighter now, a flame against the cold. The cult's leader, the woman in crimson, raised a dagger, her voice sharp as she chanted words Cedric couldn't understand. Her name, overheard from the shadows, was Vera, a sorceress who wielded the egg's magic like a weapon. The air thrummed with energy, the egg's glow intensifying. Cedric's hand tightened on his dagger, his mind racing. He was outnumbered, outmatched 5 robed figures plus Vera, all armed, their movements precise. His swordsmanship, honed through duty rather than passion, was no match for them. But the egg called to him, its light a beacon for Irinder's hope and his own. He scanned the scene, noting a narrow path winding behind the altar, partially hidden by ice. If he could reach the egg without being seen, he might escape before they struck. The curse dulled his fear, but it also dulled his confidence, whispering that he was too weak, too broken. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on Irinder's grief, the dragon's coiled form clutching at nothing in its lair. "I promised," he thought, and the vow steadied him. Cedric moved, silent as the snow, slipping down the path. The chant grew louder, masking his steps. He reached the altar's shadow, the egg's warmth radiating through the iron cage. Up close, it was beautiful, smooth, pearlescent, veined with gold, no larger than a melon, but heavy with promise. His fingers brushed the cage, and a jolt ran through him. Not joy, but something close, a pulse of connection to Arinder. Thief! Vera's voice cut through the chant, sharp as a blade. Cedric froze, the colt turning as one. Vera's eyes, cold and gray, locked onto him. You dare touch what's mine? She stepped forward, dagger gleaming. The egg's power will remake the world, and you, accursed wretch, think to steal it? Cedric's heart pounded, not with fear, but with clarity. It's not yours, he said, voice steady despite the odds. It belongs to Arinder. You stole it, like my ancestors did. Vera laughed, a sound like breaking ice. Your dragon is a relic, and you're a fool. The egg bends fate. With it, I'll rule, not grovel. She gestured, and the colt closed in, blades drawn. Cedric acted on instinct, no time for doubt. He grabbed a loose stone from the altar's base and hurled it at the nearest figure, who stumbled, cursing. Seizing the moment, he yanked the cage open, the iron thorns tearing his gloves, but not his skin. The egg was warm, heavier than it looked, and he clutched it to his chest. Vera screamed, lunging with her dagger. Cedric dodged, but the blade grazed his side, pain flaring hot and sharp. He ran, the colt's shouts echoing behind him, snow crunching underfoot. The spire's shadows swallowed him as he fled, weaving through ice and rock. Blood soaked his tunic, the egg a weight that both anchored and slowed him. Vera's voice rang out, chanting words that made the air hum, and a blast of wind knocked Cedric to his knees. The egg slipped from his grasp, rolling into a snowdrift. He scrambled for it, his vision blurring as pain and cold took hold. The colt's footsteps grew closer, Vera's laughter a taunt. You'll die joyless, Prince, she called. Cedric's hand closed around the egg, its warmth a lifeline. He staggered to his feet, stumbling into a frozen streambed. The colt was near, their shadows lengthening. He couldn't outrun them, not wounded, not in this storm. The curse whispered to give up, to let the cold take him, but Arinder's amber eyes flashed in his mind, heavy with trust. He pushed forward, each step a defiance, until his legs gave out. He collapsed, the egg cradled against his chest, snow piling around him. The world faded, Vera's chants distant, and Cedric thought, I'm sorry, Arinder. A voice broke through the haze. Hold on, stranger. Soft, steady, it cut through the storm's howl. Hands lifted him, gentle but firm, pressing cloth to his wound. Cedric's eyes fluttered open, meeting a woman's gaze, weathered, kind, unyielding. You're not dying here, she said, her voice an anchor in the chaos. She was Lyra, a nomadic healer, her dark hair streaked with gray, her hands deft as she bound his injury. Her tribe's tents loomed nearby, a haven in the blizzard. Cedric drifted in and out, warmth seeping into him as Lyra worked. The egg, safe in his pack, pulsed faintly as if echoing his heartbeat. Lyra's tribe took him in, their tents smelling of leather and herbs. As he recovered, Lyra shared her story by firelight, her family lost to raiders, her choice to heal despite her grief. Suffering doesn't define you, she said, her eyes meeting his. What you do with it does. Her words struck Cedric like a blade. He had carried his curse like a chain, letting it excuse his isolation. But Lyra, like Arinder, had turned loss into purpose. He thought of the merchant he'd saved, the hermit Tauren's wisdom, the dragon's trust. Each had stirred something in him, not joy but a quiet strength, a reason to keep going. When raiders attacked the tribe one night, Cedric, still weak, stood with them, wielding his dagger to protect the children. The act was small, but it shifted something in him, a crack in the curse's grip. Arinder's visions grew stronger, showing the dragon's past, a mate lost to hunters, an egg stolen, a life of solitude. The dragon's hope in Cedric was a weight, but also a gift. Lyra noticed the change in him, her smile faint but warm. You're more than your curse, she said, echoing his nursemaid's words from years ago. Cedric didn't believe her, not fully, but he wanted to. The visions guided him to a sanctuary hidden in the veil, where the egg could be purified to break the curse. But Irinder warned of a cost. The ritual demanded a sacrifice, his deepest desire. Cedric didn't know what he desired. Joy was a stranger, glory meaningless. Yet as he left Lyra's tribe, the egg secure in his pack, her words took root. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. The sanctuary loomed, a temple of ice carved with runes, its entrance glowing faintly. Cedric stepped inside, the egg heavy in his hands. Vera's laughter echoed in his mind, but so did Irinder's trust, Lyra's kindness. He didn't know what he'd lose, but he was ready to face it. The curse might break, or it might not, but he would try, for those who believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. The breaking of chains. The sanctuary's heart pulsed with a silver light, its icy walls carved with runes that seemed to breathe, their glow casting long shadows across the chamber. Prince Cedric stood before a pedestal of frost, the dragon's egg cradled in his hands, its pearlescent surface veined with gold, warm as a living heart. At 22, he was a man shaped by loss, his own heart bound by a curse that stole joy, leaving only a hollow ache. Yet now, in this frozen temple deep within the shattered veil, he felt something new, not joy, not yet, but a steady resolve forged through weeks of hardship, guided by the dragon Irinder's trust and the kindness of strangers. The egg was the key to breaking their shared curse, but the rune's warning echoed in his mind. To purify the egg, you must sacrifice your deepest desire. Cedric's breath clouded in the frigid air, his body aching from the wound Vera, the sorceress, had dealt him in their clash at the crystal spire. The egg had been his prize, stolen from her cult's altar, but the cost was heavy: blood, pain, and the weight of what lay ahead. Irinder's visions had led him here, amber eyes piercing his dreams with glimpses of this sanctuary, a place where the egg's magic could be cleansed, its theft undone. The dragon's grief, a mirror to his own, had bound them across miles, a thread of shared pain that gave Cedric purpose. But the ritual's demand gnawed at him. What did he desire? For years, the curse had dulled everything, leaving only a vague longing to be whole, to be worthy of the love he'd lost with his mother's death. The chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of the runes. Cedric set the egg on the pedestal, its glow intensifying, casting light across his worn cloak. The merchant's gift and his mother's journal tucked against his chest. The words she'd written years ago, "Find what makes you whole," felt like a challenge now, riddle he hadn't solved. He closed his eyes, and Irinder's voice rumbled in his mind, soft but urgent. "The egg holds our freedom, but only if you give what you hold dearest." Cedric's hands trembled. He didn't know what he held dear. Joy was a stranger. Glory, ally his father, King Alhar, had pressed upon him. Yet the sanctuary demanded an answer. The air shimmered, and visions rose like smoke, swirling around the egg. Cedric saw his father, tall and cold in the throne room, his voice cutting, "You're no son of mine." The words, spoken when Cedric was a boy, had carved a wound deeper than the curse. The vision shifted, showing a younger Cedric hiding in the palace library, his mother's journal clutched tight, her warmth a fading memory. Then came the egg's temptation. A pulse of power, promising strength, glory, a life free of doubt. He could keep it, wield its magic, prove to Alhar he was no shadow. The thought was seductive, a whisper louder than Vera's taunts. "You'll die joyless, Prince." Cedric's fingers hovered over the egg, its warmth tempting. He could take it, flee the sanctuary, become the hero Vealoria expected. But Irinder's amber eyes flashed in his mind, heavy with loss, trusting him to return what was stolen. He thought of Lyra, the nomadic healer who'd saved him, her words a quiet fire. "Suffering doesn't define you. What you do with it does." He thought of the merchant he'd pulled from a snowdrift, the hermit Torin's warning, the tribe he'd fought for despite his wounds. Each act, small and unheroic, had cracked the curse's grip, revealing a truth. His deepest desire wasn't glory or even joy. It was to be enough, to be worthy of those who believed in him. The runes flared, their light searing, and the sanctuary's voice, ancient, formless, spoke in his mind. "Name your sacrifice, cursed one." Cedric's throat tightened. "I want to be worthy," he whispered, the words raw. "I want to be enough for my mother, for Arinder, for those I've met. But if I must give that up, I will. Take it. Let the egg be purified. Let us be free." The chamber shook, ice cracking like thunder. The egg's glow surged, gold veins pulsing, and Cedric felt a pull, as if the sanctuary was sifting through his soul. The visions intensified his father's scorn, his mother's smile, his own reflection, hollow-eyed but standing. Pain lanced through him, not physical but deeper, as if the curse itself was unraveling, tearing away the longing to prove himself. He felt his knees, gasping, but held the egg's image in his mind, its light a promise to Arinder. The glow softened, the egg now radiant, free of its iron cage's taint. The runes dimmed, the sanctuary still. Cedric's chest heaved, and for the first time, a faint warmth stirred within him. Not joy, not fully, but a lightness, like a stone lifted from his heart. The curse was weakening, its chains loosening. He clutched the egg, its warmth steady, and knew the ritual was complete. But the cost lingered, a quiet ache. He had given up the need to prove his worth, accepting that his actions, not his father's approval, defined him. Cedric rose, the egg secure in his pack. The sanctuary's light faded, leaving only starlight filtering through cracks in the ice. He stepped outside, the shattered veils cold-biting but no longer crushing. The journey back to Veloria would be long, but the egg's glow was a beacon and Arinder's trust a guide. He thought of Lyra's tribe, safe now, and hoped they'd remember him not as a prince, but as a man who tried. The return was grueling, blizzards and hunger testing his resolve. Yet the egg's warmth sustained him, and Arinder's visions grew vivid, showing the dragon waiting in its lair, hope flickering in its amber eyes. Cedric's wound, though bandaged, slowed him, but Lyra's herbs and Torin's wisdom echoed in his mind, urging him forward. He avoided Vera's cult, taking hidden paths through the Frostfang Pass, his steps sure despite the pain. Weeks later, Veoloria's cliffs came into view, the dragon's lair a dark wound in the mountainside. Cedric's heart, lighter now, beat with anticipation. He entered the cavern, the egg glowing in his hands. Arinder stirred, its massive form uncoiling, scales catching the light. Its eyes widened, fixed on the egg, and a low rumble filled the chamber, not rage, but awe. "You returned," Arinder said, voice trembling. "You brought it." Cedric set the egg before the dragon, its glow illuminating the cavern. "It's yours," he said. "The curse is broken." Or breaking. "I feel it." Arinder's claw brushed the egg, and a crack appeared, light spilling forth. A hatchling emerged, small but fierce, its scales a mirror of its parents. Arinder's roar was soft, a sound of joy and relief, and Cedric felt a warmth spread through him, tentative but real, his first taste of joy, fragile but undeniable. The curse was gone, its chains shattered by his sacrifice. The dragon lowered its head, eyes meeting his. "You gave more than I asked, human. You are no shadow." Cedric smiled, the motion unfamiliar but true. "Nor are you a monster." He returned to Veloria, Arinder, and the hatchling at his side, their wings casting shadows over the fields. The kingdom, expecting a slain dragon, gasped at the sight. King Aldhar stood in the throne room, his face a mask of shock. "You defied me," he said, but his voice lacked its old venom. "I did what was right," Cedric replied, standing tall. The court whispered, but their eyes held respect, not pity. Arinder, now a guardian, soared above, its hatchling safe, its flames no longer a threat. The people, once fearful, brought offerings, food, not swords, and Veloria began to heal. Cedric stood on the palace balcony that night, his mother's journal open in his hands. He wrote for the first time, his words simple, "I am enough." The stars shone brighter, the air warmer. He thought of Arinder, Lyra, the merchant, Torin, those who'd shaped him. Joy was new, fragile, but it was his, earned through sacrifice and compassion. He was no hero, but he was whole, and that was enough. The end. Thanks for watching. For more interesting and heart-touching videos, please visit our YouTube channel and like and subscribe. Thanks.